Mark Lizotte, also known as Diesel, back at the Melbourne Guitar Show again.
Indeed. It's come around so fast.
Yeah.
Really, that's frightening just in itself, but glad to be here. And it's, a beautiful day. I've come back with sort of a celebratory kind of mood with the guitar, so that's nice.
Yeah, it really is all happening for you at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I guess it's kind of slowly been building for the last couple of years almost. Started looking at this whole 30 years kind of anniversary thing, and then the package of the greatest hits finally came together as it became a real reality, I guess, because we were waiting on two of the titles to kind of come back into the fold from other labels and stuff, and everything just kind of all the little birdies came home and to roost. The roosters came to roost, whatever it is that they're saying. And yeah, we were able to do it. And then Heath at Fender just approached me, and I'm not sure he was aware of all of those happenings or whatever, but it was just, it was some serendipity happening without a doubt. And yeah, it's really right down to this week being the week that the guitar's been ready, and that was totally not planned, and coinciding with the greatest hits coming out yesterday. So that's just mind blowing. Yeah.
So the guitar, I mean, how much back and forth, prototypes, what sort of journey?
The first one was really, really weighty and in the body. And I was kind of like, oh, look, it had a good resonant sound and whatever. But like any good husband, I listened to my wife, and she picked it up in the house and went, it's really not balanced. And I'm like, really? What do you mean? She goes, it just doesn't feel balanced. And I was like, you know what? You're right. For some people, it wouldn't have been a problem, but when the body is a lot heavier than the neck, it does tend to have to sort of feel that sort of feeling, and you just deal with it. I've got some guitars that are weighty that way. I've got ones that are weighty that way. It's not the end be all and end all. But I thought, what, if we're gonna do this, let's get it. So it's one of the most beautiful things about a Strat, I think, is its comfort. So we might as well make the most of that and just get it to the right weight dimensions. And so I asked for a lighter body, and they came back and just nailed it. It was like, wow, this is probably the lightest Strat I've ever owned. Not that light is everything, but I do like light guitars. They just feel so just manageable and fun to play, for want of a better word. You don't have this kind of thing pulling your shoulder down. And of course it would all just be nothing if it didn't sound good acoustically, and that's the first thing I always make sure is just play a few chords without plugging it in. In fact, there's so many guitars that I've gone to buy or to make an acquisition of mine, and rarely do I ever plug them in. It's really the half, or even it's not even half. It's actually probably 75% of the battle, in my opinion, is how good it sounds acoustic. And if you plug it in and something's not, if you're a bit underwhelmed, it's because the pickups are just sick or something, because let's face it, they're not going to make a dud of a guitar suddenly come to life if you change the pickups. It's all about what it sounds like acoustic. And I think people forget that, because even though it's an electric instrument, it still needs to sound good acoustic. And that's because of the union of the two bits of wood, Also, another little tip for what it's worth that I like to tell people is don't ever discount how much sound comes from the neck. The neck is, I've been able to, because of Fenders being bolt-on, you can just take necks off and just fart around and change them, and I've done that all my life. And it's been astounding sometimes, astounding how much it can improve something, but also astounding at how much you can kill the party by putting a neck on and going, well, this neck sounded really good on that guitar, but it sucks on this guitar. So it's a funny thing. So it's not just all about this. It's the union of the neck and the body together. Even though it's bolt-on, people would go, well, it's just bolt-on. It means absolutely nothing. Through neck design with dovetail joints and all that. Blah blah blah. But once you've bolted that neck on, you've got some pretty good contact there and resonance. I think it speaks for itself. A through neck design, I've always been a bit blasé about that.
So when it did come to the pickups, how much to and fro was there in that regard?
Well, look, I think we went with the Texas the specials because they're just a little bit hotter, not stupidly hotter, and they still have that classic sort of sound, but just a little bit edgier, especially on the bridge. You don't want it to be too kind of weedy. But I guess with my gauge of string, it's a big help just straight away. But I don't just assume that everyone's going to get this guitar and put 12 to 56 on it. Some might even put heavier, but generally probably about 10 to 46 or 11 to 52 or something is what most people use, I'm guessing. And that should work without whatever gauge. But for me, the biggest help with tone has been increasing the gauge. For me, that really helps things. Like whenever I've gotten a guitar in my hands, it's like, okay, I think there's potential here, let's put some strings on it, because increasing the metal content, because at the end of the day, it's a pickup that's a magnet. It's trying to find something to be magnetic with. So if you give it a nice big chunk of string, it's going to be happy. You get a lot of sound straight away. I've always said that to people. Before you go and rip the pickups out of your guitar, just try going up a gauge, like a bit more meat, and see what it sounds like. You'd be surprised. Yeah. Suddenly, wow, they don't sound so skinny anymore, We were talking before we started the interview about the importance of Warwick Newman, your audio guide, to your shows. Did you consult Wazza with the guitar? I'm so lucky having a sound guy who is also an incredible technician and is a guitar player himself. I always make the joke, Warwick's a better guitar player than me, and it's not just a joke. He's actually really quite accomplished with his hands on the guitar. He can play things that I can't play. It really helps to have someone who's got an ear at the end of the day. That's what it's all about for me, to have someone who's got that ear that can hear things and hear just those subtle things, that subtle but profound at the same time, just little differences and stuff. So yeah, it's really good having someone that is constantly kind of looking at the landscape of what's out there and keeping me kind of, I try to keep abreast with everything as well. But knowing at the end of the day, there's no magic pedal or magic amp or magic guitar. It comes from the hands. That's my belief. But it's just the tools of the trade, and like any artist would want to get the best, brush, or the sable brush, or those paints that just do a better job than those paints or whatever. These are materials that we work with to do our craft. So yeah, they are important to me. I think, I know that I can, get up and battle through with just about any piece of gear, and I'll get something out of it. But I want stuff to, be just at its peak performance, so I can get up there and just have a really good time and give people the best. I don't want to be struggling away with, and struggle town with stuff that's, like just not up to par. But a lot of it's just maintenance, like you can make most things work. Like just keeping this guitar happy is pretty simple. We change the strings quite regularly. I feel guilty about that because the amount of metal I throw, but I know there's a program now that started in America, and I'm waiting to hear something about it out here where you can recycle the strings, because I think it's about time. It's since I've been 14 years old, I always felt really weird throwing away so much stuff, that with all those little ball ends and everything that look like you could use them again. It's just like, but unfortunately they do have a shelf life and they get worn, usually a lot around here. It's a heat thing. Most of the problems that happen with strings for me are from just getting hot, because as strong as this piece of metal is, as soon as you put heat on it, pow, it's just gone. That's its nemesis, tension, heat. It's a pretty simple equation. But yeah, a little bit of lube here and there, and I found, there's a little tip for people that there's a lot of products on the market. I don't want to discredit any product, but WD-40 in a pen, which you have to buy on eBay, unfortunately, because they don't stock them in this country anymore. But they're just a handy. You can use any WD-40, but just WD-40 pen, because it's really easy to apply, and just dab, 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 dab here. All the points where the string is going to touch, basically. And on the screws too, like there. And if it's all set up, all happy, I have 4 springs going. It's float. I've just got mine floating, so I can go a semitone up. So it's just like I call it like a credit card thickness. so it's just floating both ways. You should be able to have a guitar that stays in tune. Leo Fender, and with the help of others, I'm sure, designed this system, Synchronized Tremolo, and it's unbelievable that how many 50-something years ago, and it still actually works perfectly. Like if you just pay a little bit of attention to the minor details. The nut, that's really important. Like with any new guitar, we always spend a little bit of time getting it like really slippery, working on the little slots. On the road, I've used toothpaste and a piece of cardboard because it's cutting compound, basically toothpaste. It's also good for getting scratches off of rent-a-cars before you take them back, so you don't get done. And yeah, just like clean, just make sure it's like super clean, like a jeweler would like work on some piece. And then once you've got all the little points of contact, the points of contact, obviously nut, saddles, the string retainer, you're done. It should be happy.
We're talking about the guitar release coinciding with the album and the tour. Putting together a greatest hits package. Is it a time for reflection? You look back?
Well, look, I did one by default. I didn't have any choice in it in '97 when I left a record company that I ended up with but not by choice. But has things happen? There's been always a case of the Pac-Man kind of eating the other organism. And so that's what happened. I was signed to Chrysalis Records originally, and then they got swallowed by EMI. And in '97, they said, well, it says in the contract we can do a greatest hits. And I was like, okay. At that point, I had 17 charting singles, so they were like, there's plenty to work with there. 17 songs, looks okay on a CD. And I thought, okay, sure, 17 singles. Since then, there's been obviously more. So putting 30 together was... it seemed like the right time, It's been 20-something years since the last one, and there's a lot more records, so it must be time to kind of put it, bundle it together. It's been good. Also, adding a new song that kind of made me feel like, okay, greatest hits, but let's put something new on it, right at the head of it, just kind of kick it off. So that kind of it feels like there's something that's relative to my life now, which is always nice.
Tell me about the song.
Give Me Saturday Night. Well, I wrote it originally for myself, and then I left it kind of unfinished. It was still needing a verse and a bit of a bridge and blah, blah, blah. And then I started working with this artist, Imogen Clark, who's an amazing alt country artist. We ended up producing an album, and got her to help me finish the track, and she was really, really digging it. And then she'd already kind of pretty much at that point things started just escalated really quickly, and next thing you know we're in the studio, and she had her songs for the album very much. She's a very, very concise. She's just there's no like grey with Imogen. She knows exactly what she wants, which is fantastic. I love working with people like that. Incredible focus, and so it just sort of drifted off the side, and then I thought, hang on, maybe it came back into my sort of backyard again, and at this point I didn't realize it was going to be for the greatest hits, and then of course when I started talking to the record company, they were like, how about a new song on this thing? You got anything? And I said, actually I might. I just thought, and I looked at it and I thought, this song is perfect, because as soon as I had an idea on the whole concept of it, and I wanted to call it the package 30 Years of Saturday Nights, and then that got shortened to just like Diesel 30, but the tour is called Give Me Saturday Night. So it's just kind of an acknowledgement of me making whatever night of the week it is. As a musician, your job is to go out there, and it's the biggest cliche in the world, of course, but it's like every night Saturday night, and that's your job, is to give that Saturday night feeling every night you go out there. People expect it, and it's almost like every Saturday comes around, and it's like a micro New Year's Eve, which is ridiculous, of course. But everyone's always on Monday. It's like, what'd you do on Saturday? How was your Saturday? It's like it's the most important night of the week, and I get it. When you work Monday to Friday, Saturday is important. I get that, but I'm still fascinated by that expectation that people have, and it's kept me alive. It's been like that any musician is going to be out there working on the weekends. That's what you do.
Right, man. Well, you're a busy guy, and you've got places to be. Guitar, I think, is available from December. Tour starts September, and album out this week.
Yeah, it came out on Friday, so it's actually number 1 on iTunes right now, so it's pretty cool.
Thanks for catching up on this again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.